Okendorfer is absent with notice. Jackson?
Here.
Lubes?
Here.
Joliet?
Here.
Nelson?
Here.
Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Excellent, thank you. Next up, let's all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next up, we have the approval of the minutes of our July 13th, 2021 Legislative Affairs and Government Operations Committee. If there aren't any corrections to the minutes, do we have a motion to approve? Motion by Commissioner Loop, support by Commissioner Jackson. All those in favor signify by saying aye. 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 Opposed? Minutes are approved. Next up, we'll move on to the approval of the agenda. Are there any changes or corrections to the agenda? If not, do we have a motion? Motion by Commissioner Joliet, support by Commissioner Loops. All those in favor signify by saying aye. 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 Opposed? Motion carries. Next up, we'll move on to public comment. Is there anyone from the public who would like to address the Legislative Affairs and Government Operations Committee? Alrighty, seeing none, I will close public comment. Next up, we'll move on to our regular agenda. Our first item is our legislative update by Mr. Jim Ryan, and I believe he's joining us virtually.
Yes, Madam Chair.
Good morning, Jim.
Good morning. How are you?
We're doing great. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Well, thanks for having me. I know that you had asked to get kind of an update on the American Rescue Plan and what's going on with respect to that and the budget in Lansing. We're still on summer recess, so although their committees are not meeting, there's not a lot of outwardly work going on, but the budget committees, appropriations committees, and the administration continue to work on a budget agreement for 2022. The state of Michigan has received about half of its just over $10 billion in the American Rescue Plan. And it's divided up into three categories: one state, one local, and one education. And I'm sure you probably saw last week, the governor signed legislation sent to her by the legislature to fund the education part of that for this year. So that was a big step. However, that leaves also the local share and the state. Treasury has the local share now and are in the process of funneling that back to counties, cities, townships, and villages. And it's going to be coming back to you very similar as to how they do revenue sharing. So I guess that's good news. How long that takes, I don't think we have a great idea, but they are in the process of sending that money back to the locals from the state treasury. The third part of the American Rescue Plan is state dollars. And that would be used at some point to go into the state budget wherever the legislature and the administration can come to an agreement on. It appears as of today, as we're sitting here today, that the goal is that the legislature and the governor seem to want to get the 2022 budget done first. And that likely is targeted to happen sometime in September, and not work on the state share of the American Rescue Plan until the budget has been resolved. As you know, the Constitution mandates that the budget be approved by October 1. So what that really means at the end of the day is that after the budget is agreed upon by the governor and legislature, they'll then turn to that 1/3 state funding, and through the supplemental process, begin spending that final third of the American Rescue Plan dollars through the supplemental process, probably not in one supplemental budget, but it will be divided up into multiple supplementals. But again, the timing on that, I think, is optimistically to have the budget done around mid-September, just in time for the deadline, and then begin to struggle with agreeing on how to fund, how to spend that final 1/3 of the federal dollars. That's pretty much it in a nutshell. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer those, but that's the plan as of today.
Excellent. Thank you, Jim. Do any commissioners have any questions for Mr. Ryan? Alrighty, seeing none, Jim, it sounds like we look forward to having you join us again next month, and we look forward to hearing, hopefully, a little bit more additional information once recess is over. So thank you so much.
Great, thanks. You seem surprised that I did it virtually. Is it appropriate now to come to your meetings next time, or would you rather just continue this method?
Whatever you feel the most comfortable with.
All right, I'll see you in person at the next one then.
Excellent. We look forward to seeing you in person. Thanks, Jim.
All right, be safe. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up on our regular agenda, we have an update on our sustainability officer, and we have Deputy April Lynch here with us this morning to kind of give us a brief update. So good morning, April.
Good morning. Can you guys hear me okay?
We can.
Okay, perfect. Yes, we have closed out the open position for the Environmental Sustainability Officer. We had 83 applications, wonderful applications. We were very, very fortunate to receive such high quality candidates. We narrowed it down to 14, of which we did a first round of questions through a video. And then we narrowed that down to 5, and we met with them yesterday. And so now I am down to 2 amazing candidates that I'll be doing second interviews with over the course of the next couple of weeks, hopefully next week, and hopefully extend an offer before the beginning part of August, and hopefully have an announcement. So depending on their notice they need to get at their other position, I'm sensing about a mid-September, 1st of October start date. So I don't know if there's any particular questions.
Excellent. Commissioner Gershenson.
Good morning, April.
Morning.
When you had the 83 candidates, how did you filter that down? Did you do it? Did your department do it? Or did you hire someone else to do it?
We have a consultant, HR Gov, that helped us with that. So we had kind of minimum qualifications and kind of ramped up from there who had the most experience. And I saw all of the candidates, if you will, as well. So together, both James and I were able to go through all of them and narrow that down to 14.
Thank you.
Excellent. April, what comes next? What's the process now to narrow the 14 applicants to 2?
Sure, I just did that yesterday. So we narrowed the 14 down to 5. And we did interviews face-to-face yesterday with 5 candidates, and we ended up with 2 candidates that now we need to make a decision on. So I'll be doing second interviews with those folks.
Thank you. Do we know when it's expected that we'll actually have one candidate who's ready to roll as our new Chief Sustainability Officer?
Sure. Yep. I'm hoping in the next 2 weeks that we have that we are able to have those second interviews and an offer extended. And then again, depending on what kind of notice they need to give, I'm hoping obviously the announcement we can make hopefully by the middle of August, and that they would be able to start either mid-September or 1st of October, depending again, and if they need to give a 2-week or 30-day notice to their current employer.
Sure. Well, excellent.
So I would say by mid-August we'll have some kind of announcement.
Woohoo! Well, we're looking forward to that. Commissioners, are there any
Yeah.
other questions for April? Commissioner Jackson.
Yes, thank you, April. Thank you for the update. Quick question as far as the work on this organization. With interviewing so many people and discovering people with high qualities and traits that would be good for this person, is there going to be a staff involved with a sustainability officer in their efforts?
Sure. Well, right now, we call them an army of one. But there are so many departments right now that have a lot of focus on environmental sustainability, WRC, Parks and Rec, planning, that they're going to have a team that they're going to work with. The other goal that they're going to have is starting to look at funding opportunities. And when those funding opportunities come, a lot of times it comes with allowability for, looking for admin or other support as we kind of go through that process. So right now, I think they have a good team, including myself and all those other departments, and then we'll have to start to realign what that looks like. But I know that the other departments are really excited to be part of this process and be part of the sustainability efforts. So we think right now we have a really solid team that will work with what we have internally and then continue to make those adjustments.
Thank you.
Excellent. Commissioner Joliet.
Hi, quick question in regards to the consultants that were hired for the sustainability. Will this position be interfacing with them at all through the process of doing the study?
Oh, yes, the sustainability study, yes. They're going to help take over the lead. Right now, I'm leading the campus-wide sustainability with ACOM. So this person will end up taking that role and leading the rest of the study and all of that information with me.
Okay, and has that study already started? Is that in process?
Yes, it is. It just started about 2 months ago.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any other commissioners? Seeing that there's no more questions, thank you so much, April, for joining us and giving us an update.
Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Oh,
would you like to
yes.
receive and file the
Oh,
memo?
yes. Do we have a motion to receive and file this update? Motion by Commissioner Gershenson, support by Commissioner Loops. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item has been received and filed. Next up, we'll move on to item number 3, which is the Parks and Rec Commission COVID-19 Pandemic Accounts Receivable Write-Off with Fuller Oak Management LLC for Addison Oaks Conference Center and Glen Oaks Conference Center and Grill Room. Do we have a motion? Motion by Commissioner Loop, support by Commissioner Gershenson.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity. We are presenting today a recommendation from the Parks and Recreation Commission on a debt resolution in regards to Oak Management Corporation. For those, a little bit of history, Oak Management has been an exclusive caterer for Oakland County Parks since 1974. In 2012, we established a food and beverage committee for Commission to reevaluate the relationship and develop a competitive RFP for our food and beverage services. And this was sent out, and we established Oak Management to do our conference centers and Kosh Catering to do the rest of our grill rooms and concessions. In 2016, we again sent out an RFP for the management of these facilities. And at the current time, we have Oak Management operating Glen Oaks and Addison Oaks. We are doing White Lake Oaks ourselves. And at Lion Oaks, we have Catherine's Catering out of Ann Arbor that is an exclusive caterer. Staff has undertaken the operation of the grill rooms and the water park concessions. As we know, this last year, COVID did affect many operations, probably none harder than the conference centers in Oakland County. We also established a committee to evaluate the monies that were not received from Oak Management. And on that committee, we had Commissioner McGilvery, Commissioner Vanderveen, Phil Castonia, who's online with us today, and the chairman of the Board of Commissioners, along with the help of Corporation Counsel. We did work with Janet Lekas, who's the president of Oak Management Corporation. And I have Phil here to break down the detail with you. So Phil?
Good morning.
Good morning, Phil.
So we received a request from Oak Management, and they were obviously with COVID struggling to make their payments. And we, through our committee, negotiated a resolution to resolve the debt and make them whole. One of the large parts is through the contract, we pay the utilities and then we rebill Oak Management every quarter for those utilities. When COVID hit, their money was tight, so they did stop making all payments, but we were still having utility costs and we still had building costs. So we were tracking our costs throughout 2020 and then through 2021. The resolution we brought forward with the approval of the committee was to get Oak Management to pay 100% of those past utility bills. Through the end of June, that total is $106,868.04. And then their flat fee and equipment fees that they were past due on, we've negotiated a resolution of them paying $50,000 for fiscal year 2020 and $30,000 for fiscal year 2021. While Oak Management did have sales in fiscal year 2020, about 90% of those sales were pre-COVID. So once COVID hit March of last year, their sales really were very minimal the rest of the year. And just until recently this year, they've had almost zero sales because they've been unable to open through the executive orders. And then one other point moving forward is we're going to put all utilities into Oak Management's name. So if for some chance there is some type of issue like this, we want to make sure the county's not stuck holding those utility bills. So Oak Management will be paying the utility companies directly. That is a quick summary of the resolution, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions or
Sure. Thanks, Phil. Commissioner Gershenson.
Thanks, Phil, for the update. I just wanted to commend Commissioner McGilvery and everybody that really worked so hard on this resolution. I have a couple questions. The Oak Management, they did receive CARES money, correct? Oh, Phil might be frozen.
Oh, okay, I'm back. Yep, my audio did kick out. I apologize.
Were you able to hear my question?
I was not. It cut out right after I finished.
So didn't Oak Management receive CARES money?
They received, I can't say if it's CARES money or not. They did receive PPP money, Paycheck Protection Program. If that came from the CARES money, then yes, they did. They did receive $276,000 in 2020 and $381,000 in 2021.
So
and the large portion that did.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Well,
that did pay a large portion of all their employees' paychecks to keep them whole. They did kick in some additional money to make sure their employees still got paid, but that is the bank of money they are using to fund this resolution as well.
so they kept the employees, even though no services were being offered, they kept employees on salary?
Yes, that is my understanding.
Huh. That's amazing. And is it, they are going to continue to be our vendor?
Yeah, they have a contract for the current contract they're in is an additional 4 years. So as of right now, they will be the provider for the next 4 years unless there's some other type of termination. But we can either extend at that point or we can kind of go in a different direction moving forward after that contract is up.
So you have an existing contract for an additional 4 years, and I'm sure your committee evaluated whether or not to continue working with them. Is this an extremely hard position to fill?
Through the history of doing bids for these facilities, it is. We have not gotten a lot of interested vendors in operating these facilities. It is a lot of work. They're very large buildings, and to maximize their use, it has to be a larger caterer to do that. And we did evaluate the idea moving forward, and especially with COVID, there's not a lot of catering businesses that are looking to expand right now. They're really struggling to hold on. So getting us through, their original contract was a 10-year contract. So these last 4 years, getting it through with the current vendor is obviously our first choice. But we will be having to reevaluate that in less than 4 years, because we're going to have to look at it in about 2 years because of how far some of these parties book out. We can't wait till it's expired to figure out the next step. So,
Commissioner Gersison, a couple options that we have talked about is, what if they are no longer conference centers? What if we repurpose them into something else? And another option might be is, here's our building. It's up to you to provide the caterer, the plates, the linens. You see many places going this way too. And
Definitely.
that was our goal with White Lake, is to be the pilot program for this type of procedure. But again, at White Lake, we also got hit by COVID, and we're just starting it up again.
Well, I think those are good options, Sue, for you to look at. I do know a lot of venues are offering to their customers to bring in their own catering. Did you say that staff, our park staff, is manning the grills and the concession stands?
Our park staff are manning the grill rooms, with the exception of Glen Oaks, that is operated by Oak Management because of the contractual relationship. And we also manage the concession stands at the water parks and at the campgrounds.
Is that new, or that's the way it's been?
This has been going on for, I think this is our 5th year of doing it. And it gives us control. I mean, we're there for customer service, and it works well because you can sell potato chips in a pop and at the same time make a tea time, and they can multitask with opportunities like that. So it's been, other than not being able to find staff in COVID, it's been pretty successful.
Okay, so I would assume that the Parks Commission is going to be getting reports on how Oak Management is paying their bills and in future issues that come up. Thank you.
That's correct.
Thank you. Sue, Commissioner McGilvery?
If I can, I'd just like to add a word. This resolution today, it's a hard pill to swallow. Nobody wants to lose that kind of money, particularly Oakland County Parks. The problem is because of the pandemic, it's created a real problem for that line of business in particular. So we had to address it. We had several meetings to try to come to some resolution. We let Phil do all the negotiating with Oak Management, and he did a fine job, by the way. I think that we need to, in the future, look toward catering, have preferred caterers in those locations where they would pay a rental fee for the hall, and that's an option that we've been looking at, as Sue mentioned before, but I think that that's the avenue to go to, because it's just not working out real well. So.
Thank you, Commissioner McGilvery. Sue, I have a couple clarifying questions. So, from my understanding, in 2020, they received $276,761 from PPP, and then this year they received $389,920 as far as PPP. From my understanding, on page 10, it goes on to say that they are hopeful that 2021 won't be as dire as 2020, yet in the same time it also says that they are hopeful that they will rehire many of the employees from last year. But it sounds like that, from what I think I just heard from Commissioner Gershison's question, that they kept employees on salary throughout the pandemic in 2020. So can we get some clarification In regards to that, and again, that's on page 10 of our packet.
I think with Oak Management, there's two types of employees. There are the full-time employees that are your cooks, your full-time maintenance staff, that they kept on. And then there are your part-time servers, your part-time busing people that they did not keep on. So it's my understanding that those full-time people, especially in March, they did not know when this would end, so they attempted to keep them on. And then the part-time people they did let go. And that's only through conversation, but we can attempt to get the specifics from Oak Management. And I think what they're referring to in regards to staffing is part-time staff.
I see. Thank you, Sue, for that clarification. My final statement / question is, I think Commissioner McGilvery has said it the best. This is a hard pill to swallow in regards to what we have in front of us. However, I'm hopeful that we do better as we move forward. So, Sue, is one of the preventative measures moving forward with the transfer of the utilities to Oak Management? Has that happened yet? And if it hasn't, when will that transfer of utilities take place?
This will happen upon the execution of this resolution by the board.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Is there any further questions on this item? Alrighty, seeing none, roll call, please.
On item number 3, Commissioners Gershenson,
Yes.
Jackson,
Yes.
Lubes,
Yes.
Joliet,
Yes.
Nelson.
Yes.
Madam Chair, you have 5 yeas, 0 nays.
Excellent. Motion carries. Phil and Sue, thank you so much for joining us this morning, and Commissioner McGilvery. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, we'll move on to our last item of the agenda, which is the transfer of office of Public Communications Division and reorganization of positions. Do we have a motion? Motion by Commissioner Loop, support by Commissioner Jackson. This morning, we've got our Chief Deputy Hillary Chambers and Deputy Chris Ward joining us, so thank you.
Morning.
Good morning, Madam Chair
Good morning.
and Commissioners. Thank you so much for having Chris and I, and members of our team are with us virtually, and I'm going to introduce them here in a short bit. But Commissioner Nelson, thank you for your time that you've taken to kind of understand this resolution and give us the opportunity to talk about it today. We are really excited about the vision that we're creating here in the Office of Public Communications. And I am, I've been tremendously impressed with the talent of individuals that represent the leadership, the core leadership of this grouping. Before I talk about the specifics of the resolution, I wanted to kind of give you a little bit of background, because this has been a bit of an evolution really since the early months of Executive Coulter's administration, because you all had considered and created the Office of Public Communications before the pandemic hit. So when we first started, what we realized is that communications had really had gotten kind of delegated to several areas of the county. There was a group of people in economic development who did marketing, did social media, did event planning. And in that first reorganization that Deputy Carlson did, that was the core of people who formed the initial version of the Office of Public Communications. And so we decided it would be better if they were a centralized team. When we arrived, there was really one person in the executive office, Bill Mullen, who was serving a communications, a media officer, or what you might refer to as a public information officer role. And everybody else was kind of separated out in various parts of the county. At that time as well, we began to realize that there really was not a role of community engagement. If you turn the clock back to just before the Great Recession, the county had a number of positions at very senior levels that were more engaged in community engagement. And I thought that the conversation that you were having before this meeting in terms of senior isolation was informative, and I think that OPC can be helpful in that area going forward. But there was kind of a senior director of senior affairs at that point, and other higher level positions. There was an arts and cultural position, but they made the decision because of the recession to kind of eliminate a number of those positions. And so there really wasn't a community engagement team. There was certainly outreach being done in veterans or in planning or in the Main Street program, but there wasn't what I would refer to as, community liaisons. And so in the first version of the reorg, we created the Community Affairs Manager, which was filled after that by Ashley, who is with us today, and I'll introduce her in a bit. But what we realized is that we really wanted to have a core of people who could, be liaisons to communities and be doing community engagement. And we saw the value of that in spades during the pandemic in terms of their ability to kind of reach out to various communities. So, that was kind of what we found. The other interesting thing is that there was a group of individuals in IT that under the umbrella of eGov that was doing more traditional communications and messaging and social media work. You would think that there is certainly a function for IT in this work because they help departments with the structure of their website, they help them set up accounts, they help them with the back end items. But I was kind of surprised to find out that, staff over there were making decisions regarding the brand, regarding the OakGov social media. I mean, they had processes in place to do that, but it was separate from, any core of communications. And so we had made the decision early on before the pandemic that we wanted to kind of grapple with what eGov was doing and what made sense to stay in IT and what really should be centralized within public communications. So that kind of brings us forward to today. They were, as IT members of the team, they were proprietary. So departments would kind of pay for their services. So it took us a minute to figure out the impact of that and to figure out the best approaches as we brought this resolution forward. So this has been a long time in the making. Quite frankly, this team, has worked together loosely, in this function, especially during the crisis of the pandemic. But we wanted, we've been eager and anxious to kind of formalize the structure, which is why we were so, so excited to bring this forward to you today. So I have a few slides that I hope will give you a sense of our vision. It's not, we're not all the way there yet, but we have a vision for what we want this area to be. So I think, Pam, if you can take us to the bubble chart. We worked hard to figure out the best way to kind of communicate with you. We see this, we often refer to what we hope to be as a hub. And so, what we want OPC to be is kind of the hub for all the county departments who need assistance in this area. So they need assistance with strategic communication or planning out marketing, if they need creative operations and graphics assistance, video assistance, if they need media relations, if they need marketing, schedule support, constituent services, all of these things we want to kind of we want to help assist them with. And then who we see that we're servicing, of course, primarily the public. We are taking on the role of communications to employees, which used to be kind of housed in HR and assisted, but we want to be the team that really works with HR to have a proactive strategy to communicating with employees. And then, of course, the communications with organizations and in our cities, villages, and townships. So, Pam, if you can if you can go to the next chart. Yes. So what we envision as an organization is, really kind of a few areas of operation under OPC. You have strategic communication, which is where our award-winning journalist, Kathy Gray, who we're proud to have joined the team recently, is housed. We have Bill Mullen, who, you couldn't find someone who's more respected by the local media than Bill, who will be taking on the public information officer position. And then we have what we call creative operations, which is the team that Pam Tremble, who all of you know, and I'm going to go through this quickly because I want to introduce their faces. So Pam leads a team that does all of the graphics, all of the marketing, all of the brand development, all of the video. Like, she keeps us on track in terms of all of, those types of activities. And then we brought Caitlin Keeler over from the eGov team, and you couldn't find anyone stronger in terms of social media, in terms of marketing campaigns, in terms of the editorial calendar, and she's going to lead that team of individuals who do that work. And then community engagement, Ashley McBride, who leads a team of 3 people, herself, Carolyn Krause, who joined us recently, and Marcus Pearson, who joined us right before February before the pandemic. Pam, if you could stop the PowerPoint for a minute, I just want to reintroduce everybody. So can we go to the folks that have joined us? Is that possible? No? Are they with us? Okay. Well, there's Ashley. Ashley, welcome. Ashley has good news because she is also expecting her first child in November, so we're thrilled. Kathy Gray, who I introduced previously. Pam Tremble, who most of you know because she's the go-to person when anybody needs help with graphics, but quite frankly, we're utilizing her leadership and her leadership skills more in this position. And then, of course, Caitlin, who is a leader of our team in terms of social media and marketing. And then Tom Hardesty, and I'm going to come back to Tom in a bit here. But I just kind of want to give you a few examples of how, we envision this hub, this team of leaders who are directing their staff. Some examples of how it has kind of come together. The vaccine clinics, when we got to the June, July period, and when we were going out and establishing the community clinics, this team worked hand in glove with the health department. So, Ashley's team worked with Calandra to identify the community clinic sites. Pam's team worked with health to do all of the graphics in terms of the signs they would need there. Caitlin's team worked with health to figure out all of the marketing strategy, the kit that you would need to kind of promote these clinics through social media. And then Ashley's team helped in terms of informing the local community. So it really was kind of a cohesive strategy in terms of everyone playing a role in terms of, helping be successful with those vaccine clinics and supporting the health department. You'll remember the March remembrance that we did on the anniversary of COVID. Well, this was this team's idea. We talked about how do we remember, how do we mark this 1 year anniversary. They researched ideas. They came forward with the Glen Lore idea. Caitlin negotiated with them what it would mean. Kathy did all the wonderful writing. Pam worked with IT to ensure the storyboard was on the website. Ashley's team informed the community. I mean, they just knocked it out of the park in terms of the idea and the planning and the implementation. And then, it's smaller things. Any video that people need throughout the county, the sheriff's annual report Pam's team is doing in terms of the graphics. So, you know, that's kind of the future vision that we have, that they're the hub that can kind of bring all of this together for the county. Ashley does weekly community engagement calls where she brings together the people who do outreach in housing and veterans and economic development and her team, and they share information in terms of what each department is doing so that we can all support each other's efforts. Caitlin holds a weekly communications call with all of the department people who are doing social media, including the Board of Commissioners, and kind of goes over what's going on, what's coming up, you know, and so that they can all share information. So it is still a work in progress, but I think it's a really solid vision in terms of how we can all work together to make sure that we're communicating and sharing information with the public. Pam is undertaking an evaluation of the website. You know, we are going through a transition there so that we can make it more user-friendly and make sure that we have the resources on the website that are necessary as we transition out of COVID and into normal businesses. So those are some of the examples, the most recent examples of how we envision this team. I'll just go quickly to the slide, the map slide, Pam, if you could bring that up. I just want to show you how we envision the community engagement team rooting themselves in the county. So this is a map of the county. And so what we've done is, I guess I'm kind of old school. This is how I always see community engagement. You're assigned to a turf, and so these are the areas that Ashley's team will, now that we're past COVID and they can get out and about, will begin to root themselves in. The orange is Ashley's area. The green is Marcus Pearson's area, and then Carolyn, the newest member of our team, is taking on the blue area, which had previously been represented by Mike McCready, who, as you know, is now the Economic Development Director at the City of Novi. And so Carolyn is introducing herself to those areas. In addition to geographic assignments, they also will be taking on assignments in terms of some of the big programs or activities that the county does, like Carolyn's taking on leadership for the Elite 40 awards program. They're dividing up like constituency groups and, you know, doing other outreach as well beyond the geography assignments. So that's kind of what our vision is. I wanted to kind of talk for a minute about why we feel strongly about the location of this team of the Office of Public Communications. Because the resolution before you recommends moving this team to join the department that Tom leads, emergency management. And so it would be renamed Emergency Management and Public Engagement. And there's a number of reasons for that. One, we feel that there's synergies with that department in terms of the interaction that is really vital with the public. And we saw that, you know, with the pandemic in terms of how critical emergency management is and how rooted they are in our communities. And we feel like the vision of OPC is easily housed there. We also, in County Executive Coulter, felt strongly about this. We want to give the Office of Public Communications a little autonomy from the county executive. I think too often people think that community engagement or media relations or communications is about the elected official or that personality. And he wanted to make sure that this division of folks had some autonomy so that we could go out and meet with not only the departments that report to us, like, for example, Commissioner Gershenson, top on our list is meeting with the animal shelter folks and coming up with a marketing campaign of how to encourage increased use of dog licenses. You know, we want to have a comprehensive strategy for that area. But we want to be service to the other county departments and the Board of Commissioners as well. So I want to send these talented leaders out to meet with folks, describe the vision for OPC, and welcome their involvement with us so that we can support their efforts as well. And then third, and this brings me to Tom's leadership, I think that it doesn't it doesn't, I don't think we can ever say it enough. We created the department, we made Tom the director of the department, and, his steady leadership during the pandemic was really phenomenal. And I think people don't quite understand the role that he played. Yes, he played the role of, emergency management in terms of, outreach with the communities and with the health entities that need our help. But Tom was really our go-to person when it came to CARES Act eligibility as well. So seeing him kind of work that piece of eligibility and budgeting, really gave me confidence that he could be the person to house OPC. He now has not only the Division of Homeland Security under him, we put the Division of Building Security, of which we have a new leader under him, and now OPC. So I really feel like he has demonstrated the skills to kind of lead those three divisions. And so I think that this has great potential. We have a lot of coordination and collaboration and systems to still establish, but I'm anxious to kind of let this team get formalized, because up until now, we've been kind of working together on an informal basis and having to kind of pull people from different pieces and on contract here or contract there. And this resolution really helps us formalize the role and gives them a sense of security and purpose that they can really kind of take and run with. So that's kind of the philosophy about the approach. And then, of course, I have Chris Ward here to back me up on the specifics of the resolution, and I deeply appreciated his help in the drafting of the details because, as you read it, you can understand it was, as Chris likes to say, a complicated transaction. So I'll stop there, and, I would welcome any questions, any comments, any thoughts that you have about things we should, look at going forward.
Commissioners, questions? Commissioner Jackson? No, go right ahead.
No, well, basically, it's just a comment. And I know we're in an information age, and just being able to bring together information in this way is efficient. And I feel as though you guys that represent the team, firsthand about how we used to operate when we had special projects, even when we needed help with information and promoting our initiatives. So I feel as though working together in this way, it will make us more proactive with our communications and less reactive, but because we know we're in an open system and things change all the time. So I'm happy to see, and I want to compliment Ms. McBride for her leadership last year in our communities, even with the census, because that was a big undertaking during a pandemic year. And I just really think that this is the way to go. It's almost like a corporate model from where, other workplaces I see are set up this way. So I think that there's a lot of opportunity for us to be able to utilize your services in conjunction with the executive office instead of possibly sometimes competing. So that was just my first impression of where we're headed with this. So I like it.
Well, Commissioner Jackson, thank you so much for that. And I think this team will tell you that what they hear me say a lot about is proactive versus reactive. We used to have our agenda be the proactive things and the reactive things. So yes, I want this team to be proactive, and we have a retreat planned in August where we want to think about the next year and plan things out. So thank you very much for saying that. And to a certain extent, the census feels like 5 years ago. It's hard to believe, right? But yes, thank you for mentioning Ashley's role there, because she kind of stepped in and led the team of our census folks as well, and helped coordinate those efforts in the county. And to a certain extent, that also is another example. because Pam led the graphics, you know, the bags, all the materials, and, you know, and Kaylin pitched in with the social media, and so it was, again, a team effort, so thank you.
Commissioner Joliet.
So, thank you. And I'm all for reorganization and making things more streamlined. My concern is the net effect on the general fund. It looks as though the cost here is $734,347. Now, it's broken down, and I understand the ARP looks like it's covering half of it, and those 4 positions will expire in 2024. And the other part is being covered by state revenue sharing, correct? Am I right on that?
Yeah, we had to identify a funding source. There's favorability in revenue sharing, right?
Okay. And this is all new to me in terms from coming from local. State revenue sharing has always been a big concern. I know the county did not receive any state revenue sharing in the years 13 and 14. Obviously, that started back up again. I have a strong concern relying on that for future needs because the state coming out of the pandemic and just, it seems as though the state is disinvesting in cities, villages, townships, and counties going forward. And I see that this obviously is the 373, and that's for this year, but obviously these positions are not going away, except the 4 for the ARP. So that's one of my questions. I have some other ones. Again, I'm all for streamlining, reorganization, making things more efficient. It's just the funding that this is going to create for us.
Can I
Sure,
respond,
absolutely.
Commissioner? So yes, the state shared revenue being indicated as the funding source really does just cover us for the balance of this fiscal year, which runs out on September 30th. I think the intent here is to transfer this into the general county budget. Upon your adoption, there would be a budget amendment prepared to the Finance Committee that would incorporate this into the budget that would be approved and considered by the board in September. So I wouldn't look at it like state shared revenue is like the long-term funding source for this. It's just, this is sort of it's part of the routine business. If we have a budget amendment that has to be paid for, we have to identify a funding source. So revenue sharing is not totally dedicated at this point in the fiscal year. As far as the ARP positions, as you correctly pointed out, they are automatically phased out with the elimination of the funding source. I think Hillary could probably speak to this better than I can or the team can, but it's really a reflection of the increased capacity between dealing with the pandemic and response, reaching out to the community, all of the extra things that we've seen on our website, all of the resources that are available to your constituents. As Hillary mentioned, Pam and her graphic design team, they really have ramped up their activity quite a bit. And so some of these positions right now have been filled on a consistent basis, on a contractual basis. And at this point, it's clear with the rescue plan dollars, now adding a whole other aspect to all of our work, we're going to need them a little bit longer for sure. And so it's just a matter of how you want to pay for it.
Right.
Oh, yeah, go, continue, absolutely, I'm sorry.
One other question. I know that there is supposed to be a 4% reduction in budgets going forward. So I noticed that the county executive office is transferring a number of positions out into the OPC office and emergency management. So who will will emergency management have to cut other positions? How will they cut their budget by 4% with this increase in staffing? Who will get like the credit for that?
Well, over time, right, and the budget process, and I think you heard Kyle articulate this a few nights ago, but yes, every department has to, represent what we have to do to pay for the comp study. And so this budget will reside within the emergency management department. So it will be factored into their budget, but there won't be any cuts to emergency management staff to fund this.
If I could respond as well. So the way the county executive's office has looked at this is each elected official with the department they're responsible for, or departments they're responsible for, sort of holistically, we're looking to them to meet their objectives. So I think you might be able to relate, now is not the time to reduce funding in the health department, right?
Right.
So, yeah, but there are other departments that were able to exceed our request this year. So it all balanced out when we looked at it from the standpoint of the departments that report up to the county executive. This is clearly a priority for this administration, and it may be a net increase here, but we are offsetting with other decreases in other departments under us.
Thank you. I appreciate the insight, and again, I'm all for reorganization, for streamlining, but I'm not comfortable with supporting this at the moment without understanding future sources for funding. So I'll have to wait with finance. Thank you.
One other small item, the county has subsidized the IT department for many years
Yes,
now.
I saw the line transfer.
And so this is partially offset by reducing
Yeah,
that subsidy.
I did see that. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. I have a couple questions. So is there a specific reason why the reorganization and the creation of the Public Communications Office is happening now?
Sure, yes. So, I mean, it potentially could have happened in April, right? I mean, we have been working on this for several months, and, between the CARES Act and the pandemic, and then ARP, and focusing in on getting those acute resolutions over to you, and the transaction. I mean, we really have been working on this internally since about March. In working out the details with HR and fiscal, and other things just kept getting in the way of bringing it over to you.
If I could add to that as well, I think there's a point in time here that's important to recognize that we need to incorporate this into the budget that you're going to be considering. Hopefully you'll approve the request, but if it's not here, it's somewhere else. Functionally, they've been working together in this capacity, so bringing them under a single management and budgetary structure would make a lot of sense, and we need to factor that into the budget.
Okay. My second question is, so from my understanding, the Office of Public Communications will be available to support all county operations, including staff and elected officials. Does this impact or affect, let's say, the Board of Commissioners communication staff?
No, it would not, and they may be able to speak to this better than I can, but I can speak to it from my experience. Many of these people have been incredible resources during my time at the board, and they will continue to be so. The difference maybe from those folks that were over in IT and the eGov team is they had to track every minute of their time and then bill it back to a department and justify their existence. And if they couldn't justify their existence, the positions were all, became threatened. There's a process we use through the IT department where we go in with other departments and sort of battle it out for how to allocate hours. This moves it away from that and into really the focus holistically in delivering the service. So at this point, we don't have a bill back plan. I think there's an indirect cost rate that for many services that gets built into the budget, and I think that's the plan for this at this point.
Okay, thank you. And my last question is, so if I understand, there's a proposal for 6 college interns to be a part of this. My question with that is what role will those interns have? In addition, how will they be chosen?
Yeah, so those are actually existing positions right now. The proposal before you is to move them under the Human Resources Department, who will operate a county executive administration-wide internship program, finding the interns, placing them, using them to their most effective way. I don't know if April's still on. She could speak to this.
Yeah, again, this was another item where there were kind of intern positions spread throughout different areas. Like, Pam's traditionally had a graphics intern, economic development's had a few interns, and we decided, the decision was made when we did the economic development reorg to kind of group them together. And then HR expressed, Brittany and April expressed a desire to have them housed in HR so they could really come up with an intern program. And they could do the recruitment, they could get from each department and area. When they needed interns, they could make sure that they had an educational program. You know, they could operate as a cohort and know each other. And I thought that made great sense, because I think there needs to be, you know, an intern program that, you know, that has some trainings, has some education, and allows departments to kind of say how they would use interns. And so that's what we're making official in this resolution.
Very much in the spirit of de-siloing and providing the service, you know,
I think
across
that's
multiple
great. I
departments.
appreciate the clarification on that. Do any other commissioners have questions? Commissioner Gershenson?
Yeah, I was lucky enough to be on the transition team, and I know that consolidating communications has been a priority for this administration, and one that I support. We are all over the place in terms of communication departments, and I do think it will be a lot better to consolidate it. And I know several of the team members. I know what a strong team it is, and the great work that you have done. It was a little surprising to me to place it in Homeland, what is it, Homeland
Emergency
Security?
Management.
Emergency Management. And so who is going to be leading this communication team? Are these folks going to be reporting to Tom?
You'll see in the resolution and in the org chart, this resolution does create a manager position for the Office of Public Communications. It's vacant right now. You know, I have provided the leadership to this team. They provided their own leadership. But at some point in the future, that does give us the ability to hire a manager of the Office of Public Communication. So then Tom would have, you know, 3 managers under him: Homeland Security, Building Safety, and then this Public Communications.
And Tom, how comfortable are you overseeing a communications team?
Knowing the quality of the people that are there, that certainly makes it easier. I've had a great opportunity, especially over the last year and a half, to work with them. Found them to be a tremendous benefit to a lot of the things that we were doing, as well as learning many times how often some of our paths did cross, and that we could do a better job, frankly, of getting together on some of this messaging and some of our community work, which Ashley's been just tremendous with. So knowing the staff that's here, I certainly am comfortable and honored to even be offered to be a part of it.
Okay, because if you look at an organizational chart, one thing I've been so impressed with is how we've moved things around to the appropriate. We've changed departments, locations, we've moved them where it makes sense. This one is, if you look at an organizational chart, is a little bit of a stretch to me. However, I think my vision was that we set up a communications department that worked and coordinated with every department, including the Board of Commissioners. That would be something, that would be my long-term goal. I think there would be a lot of advantage to coordinating all the communications, including the Board of Commissioners. You know, we have a great team too, but we have to pay to interface with some of you and some of your services. So my goal would have been to establish a larger communication team. I'd like to ask you to go through some of these classifications, descriptions. It's easier for me to know who these people are. When you say a multimedia specialist, I'm assuming you're talking about Caitlin?
No.
No.
Our multimedia specialist, I don't know if you want me to go through the.
I do. I'd
but,
appreciate it.
You know, the multimedia specialist is Eli, who certainly came in many pinches for the Board of Commissioners when we needed to have something broadcast and work through some of the issues we had with remote meetings and interfacing video content, that type of thing. So he's at IT now, so he'll be moving over to this creative operations team. So.
And is Eli merit or is he contract?
He is merit right now.
And then who's the marketing and communication supervisor?
So that's Pam Tremble.
Okay.
And that position was approved and transferred last year. As Hillary mentioned, there was sort of a phase one of this.
And Pam needs no description.
Pam needs no description.
Okay. Executive
She
Secretary?
puts the super in supervisor. The executive secretary is Jamie Fenner. That position is
Okay.
actually the technical
No, I've
office
worked a
assistant.
lot with Jamie. That makes sense. Graphic Designer?
The graphic designer under creative operations is Amy Klopsky? Yes. Yeah. So that one, again, was brought over last year from the Human Resources Department, and I think that is the one continuing proprietary revenue position.
I'm sorry, I do want to say, we can keep going, but we do, especially since elevating Pam to a leadership role, we did need to add graphic design work, so that's why.
Makes sense.
Yeah, mhm.
Yep. Marketing Coordinator?
Christopher,
Dinan.
Dinan. yeah.
Chris was in economic development. He is kind of Eli's partner, so he does all of the video. So he would have been the one that went out and taped the individual interviews with people getting their vaccines and put together that awesome video. So yes, he does a lot of video marketing work for us.
Again, that
Digital-
one was brought over last year as well.
I'm sorry, Chris?
That one was transferred last year.
Okay. Digital Marketing, Community Coordinator?
So that position, so this comes into the complexity of the transaction, but I believe that was Christy Zamora's position, who took the VSIP and retired from county service.
So that's open.
No,
Yeah.
Michelle DiArmond, so that we use Christie's position. That was an open interview process. Michelle comes to us from HR. So she applied for that position and was hired into that position from HR.
Okay. And the Project Supervisor?
Project supervisor, trying to connect I'm going to throw out a lifeline, project supervisor.
So it's actually a project advisor, and that's Al Adler is part-time
Yes. Yeah, and again-
writing for us.
And that one was approved last year as well.
Okay,
Thank
so
you.
that's a part-time position. Is that a contract position?
No.
PTNE.
Okay.
Alan's been with the county for a few years. He was previous, and still, he would have been the one that wrote the Telegraph, the employee newsletter. So he spends a lot of time talking to employees and writing up stories, and he is engaged in writing the employee newsletter right now. That's his role.
And then, Tom, maybe you can help me then from IT, the Digital Communications Coordinator?
Well, Caitlin, go ahead.
Yeah, I can handle that. So
Okay.
that's Caitlin, who
Okay.
leads that team at eGov right now, so she'll be just transferring from IT.
The graphic designer from IT
Exactly.
is Caitlin?
Well, she is the coordinator of the team over the eGov team.
Right, but there's also a transfer of a graphic designer?
Yes, so that position, I believe, is Jonathan Schechter.
Okay.
He's also a PTNE. He writes the nature blog, and does other writing for the county.
And from the county executive's office, the marketing coordinator?
Digital marketing coordinator, we have got several in here, so I'm just trying to pair up which one.
That's
you-
Michelle Anderson.
Michelle Anderson, who I believe you just touched upon.
Right, Michelle was hired
Mhm.
before the pandemic. She does the social media for the executive office.
From the county executive's office, again, Media and Communications Officer?
That's Bill's position, Bill
Okay.
Mullen. We're renaming it Public Information Officer.
All right. And then the executive secretary?
So that one is Jamie Fenner that we touched upon.
Right, so that's twice mentioned then?
Let me
It's
see
in the
where
first-
you're- So there is the transfer under the one resolve clause,
I see.
Commissioner. And then there's the
Okay.
titling or reclassification of that position.
Got it. And the central employee records coordinator?
Let me also clarify, so there is an executive secretary position that we're proposing to delete as well.
Okay.
So-
Central employee records coordinator?
So we had another VSIP taken on the fifth floor.
Who was it?
Doreen and Leanne both took the visa.
Okay, so that's an open position? Or you're
Yes,
deleting that
they're both open,
position?
and we're asking to delete that position. I believe Doreen was the records coordinator, and Leanne was the secretary.
So the next one that you have with no change in salary, the four that you mentioned, so you're just retitling these?
That's correct.
Okay. And so I do want to have continue the discussion about using merit employees versus contract employees, and we can certainly have that discussion after. Yeah, I'd like to compare and contrast those numbers. And did you consider putting this department under other departments, like IT, for instance?
We considered all different options. We would never put it back under IT. It was not a good match there at all in terms of messaging and communications, or the public. The IT, atmosphere and approach is very different than what this department is. And the county executive does not support creating an independent department for this role. So we talked about this a lot, and we all agreed that it made the most sense for it to be within the emergency management department.
Again, back to the point of not following this model of billing back departments, having them spend a lot of their time following minute by minute who they're servicing. The idea here is to build a strong team that's available to all county departments. Outside of that IT model of cost recovery and that continual survival mode of having to ensure they've got enough operational charges in order to stay afloat.
Well, again, I would like clarification when you say available to all departments, how in particular the Board of Commissioners could benefit from this.
You got pretty strong negotiating ground here, Commissioner. I think that the Board of Commissioners would definitely, and have used these folks in the past.
Well, I know we have.
But I would say, in the past administration, we were discouraged from relying heavily on the eGov team and really encouraged to create our own. So I think this is a change in philosophy.
And the Board of Commissioners, they have, throughout the pandemic, have joined the weekly communications call so that they are fully informed of everything that's going on, and that we're fully informed about what the commission is, what their priorities are as well.
Well, I think that's very important that all departments are involved, and I was glad to hear, Ashley, that you've been meeting and including the housing department, affordable housing, and how about veterans? Where do they fall?
Yes, they are part of the weekly collaboration as well. I think that you may know they brought on Tyrone Jordan, who was a member of the Census Outreach team, to do veterans outreach. He was with us during CARES Act and did all of the outreach to the Veterans Post for that grant. And so, yes, Ashley's team, he's part of the weekly collaboration.
Well, I've learned something in my time here, and that is not to second-guess committees that work really hard on putting forth a resolution or putting forth a change. So I will be supporting this change. I would like to have continuing discussions with Mr. Ward about certain particular aspects of it. But what a great team, just to see Pam and Kathy, and I don't know Caitlin yet. I'm just getting to know Ashley. And of course, Tom's work speaks for itself. So I wish you all good luck in this new venture.
Is there any further discussion on item number 4? Alrighty. If possible, I'd like to make a request to have the PowerPoint slides that was shown at the beginning. Can we get that sent out to all members? And then Pam, would that be receive and file now or receive and file at our next?
You can receive and file it now and then take a vote on the resolution.
Okay, excellent. Is there a motion to receive and file the PowerPoint slides? Motion by Commissioner Joliet, support by Commissioner Jackson. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. If there isn't any further questions or discussion on item number 3, can we have, item number 4, the transfer to the Office of Public Communications Division and reorganization of positions. Let's do a roll call, please.
On item number 4, Commissioners Jackson,
Yes.
Lubes,
Yes.
Joliet,
No.
Gershenson,
Yes.
Nelson.
Yes.
Madam Chair, you have 4 yeas, 1 nay.
Excellent, thank you. Well, thank you so much, Chief Deputy Chambers and Deputy Ward, for joining us in person today. It was very helpful, so thank you. Is there any further business to come before the Legislative Affairs and Government Operations Committee? Seeing none, I call this meeting adjourned at 11:09 a.m.